should shine upon itself. Why then at night, or when there are clouds and fog, is there no light? Light, therefore, is neither the same as nor different from the sun and space. Thus, when looked into, essentially, there are no forms. The seven elements, for they cannot be pointed out like unreal flowers in the sky that can only produce unreal fruit. So why do you inquire about their mutual destruction? But when their underlying nature is looked into, it is fundamentally real, for it is absolute bodhi. Since this absolute enlightened mind is basically neither water nor fire, why do you question their mutual hindrance? Within this true and absolute bodhi enlightenment, if you give rise to the karmic illusion of space, space will manifest. If you have similar illusions of earth, water, fire, and wind, one after another, they will manifest separately, and if you give rise to them all, they will appear simultaneously. Purna Maitreya Niputra. What does simultaneous appearance mean? If two men walking in opposite directions see the sun reflected in water, each will see the reflection follow in his direction. There is no fixed standard here, and you cannot query why one sun can move in opposite directions or why two suns are seen when only one appears in the sky, thereby defending your delusion without any prop on which to hold. Expounding the common source of delusion and enlightenment to sum up the intermingling of phenomenon and noumenon. Purna Maitreya Niputra, because you cling to form and space that displace each other in the Tathagata store, the latter, in accordance with your karma, manifests as space and form which pervade the whole dharma realm, and as a result there appear within it the blowing wind, still voidness, a bright sun, and dark clouds. Due to their delusion and perplexity, living beings turn their backs on bodhi and cling to sense objects, thereby giving rise to troubles, klesha, with the resultant appearance of illusory forms. Ask to me, my uncreated and unending profound enlightenment accords with the Tathagata store, which is absolute bodhi, and ensures my perfect insight into the dharma realm, where the one is infinite and the infinite is one, where the large manifests in the small and vice versa, where the immovable bodhi mandala appears everywhere, where my body embraces the 10 directions of inexhaustible space, where the kingdom of treasures, the Buddha land, appears on the tip of a hair, and where I sit in a speck of dust to turn the wheel of the dharma. As I have wiped out all illusory objects of sense to accord with bodhi, I have realized the nature of absolute enlightenment of the Buddha Tathagata. The Tathagata store containing both noumenon and phenomenon. Meditative study of the mean, dhyana. Elimination of is to reveal the true mind. The fundamental, absolute, and perfect mind of the Tathagata store is neither mind, nor the elements of space, earth, water, wind, and fire, neither eye, nor ear, nose, tongue, body, nor intellect, neither form, nor sound, smell, taste, touch, nor idea, dharma, neither the field of sight perception, nor the other fields of sense, including that of the intellect, neither enlightenment, nor unenlightenment, nor the 11 other links in the chain of existing, including old age and death, neither the end of enlightenment, nor that of unenlightenment, nor that of the 11 other links, neither misery, nor the accumulation of misery, extinction of passion and the path thereto, neither wisdom nor gain realization, neither charity, dana, nor discipline, sila, neither zeal, virya, patience, shanti, meditation, dhyana, wisdom, prajna, nor perfection, paramita, and even neither tathagata, arahat, samyak, sambodhi, pari, nirvana, nor true eternity, bliss, self, and purity. Elimination of is not to reveal the true mind. Thus, the basic enlightened mind of the Tathagata store, being neither mundane nor supramundane, is wonderful in that it is also identical with worldly mind and the elements of space, earth, water, wind, and fire, with eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and intellect, with form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and ideas, with the field of eye perception and all other fields before, and including that of intellect, with enlightenment, unenlightenment, and the 11 other links in the chain of existence before, and including old age and death, with the end of enlightenment, of unenlightenment, and of the 11 other links, with misery and its accumulation, with the extinction of passions and the path thereto, with dana, sila, virya, shanti, dhyana, prajna, and paramita, and also with tathagata, arahat, samyak, sambodhi, parinirvana, true eternity, bliss, self, and purity. Simultaneous elimination of is and is not to reveal the absolute mind. Thus, the underlying principle of the absolute enlightened mind of the Tathagata store, being identical with and including both the mundane and supramundane, is above, is and is not, and beyond both identity and difference. How therefore can worldly beings of the 3 realms of existence and in the supramundane Sravaka and Pratyeka Buddha states fathom the Tathagata's supreme bodhi and penetrate the Buddha wisdom by word and speech? For instance, Though a lute can make sweet melody, it is useless in the absence of skillful fingers. It is the same with you and all living beings, for although the true mind of precious Bodhi is complete within every man, when I press my finger on it, the ocean symbol radiates, but as soon as your mind moves, all troubles, klesha, arise. This is due to your remissness in your search for supreme Bodhi, in your delight in Hinayana and other contentment with the little progress which you regard as complete. The one mind, sudden awakening and realization. Purna Maitrayani Putra said, the Buddha and I possess the true, absolute, and clean minds of complete enlightenment, which are the same and wholly perfect. But why, after so many transmigrations due to my delusion from the time without beginning, and after my present attainment of the saintly vehicle, am I still unable to realize the ultimate, whereas the world-honored one has eliminated all falseness and has realized absolute permanence? I beg to ask the Tathagata what causes the delusion that screens living beings from their profound enlightenment and so subjects them to their present perdition. The Buddha replied, although you have wiped out your troubles, klesha, traces of your defilement still remain. I will now put some worldly questions to you. Have you not heard of the madman Yasnadatta of Sravasti, who would look into mirror and delight in seeing his eyebrows and eyes, but when morning he failed to see them in his own head, thought himself bedeviled? Do you think there are any valid reason for such madness? Purnaya Maitrayani Putra replied, there was no valid reason. The Buddha said, the absolute Bodhi is basically enlightened and absolute. When it is screened and wrongly called false, how can there be a real cause of this delusion? For it is real reason. How can it be called false? All this arises from wrong thinking, which develops into further wrong thinking. When one falseness is heaped on another, in spite of the teaching of Buddhas in countless former eons, you are still unable to avoid delusion. Its causes are also under delusion. But if you realize that it has none, falseness will have no support and will vanish, since delusion was never created. What is there to destroy, to realize Bodhi? This is like a man who, when awake, relates what he saw in a dream. He may be ingenious, but what can he get from it? Still less can he benefit from a state which does not derive from any cause and does not really exist, like Yagnadatta, who, without reason, took fright at not seeing his own head. If he suddenly ceased to be crazy, his head would not come from elsewhere, and if even he was still mad, it was not really lost. Purna Maitrayani Putra, since this is the nature of falseness, where is its cause? If you will only cease to discriminate and to believe in the three illusions that there are, the universe, karmic retribution, and the realms of living beings, the three conditions derived from killing, stealing, and carnality will come to an end. Without these conditions, the three causes will not arise, and as with mad Yagnadatta, the mad nature of your own mind will come to an end. When it does, that is enlightenment, Bodhi. Thus, your unexcelled, pure, and enlightened mind, which essentially pervades the Dharma realm, does not come from outside. How can it be realized? By toilsome and profound practice and by achievement. This is like a man with a Chintamani pearl sewn in his coat who forgets all about it, thinks he is really poor, and wonders about begging for food. Although he is poor, his pearl has never been lost. If a wise man suddenly tells him that it is in his coat, all his wishes will be answered and he will become very rich. He will thus realize that his wonderful gem does not come from outside. Ananda then came forward, prostrated himself, with his head at the feet of the Buddha, stood up and asked, the world-honored one now speaks of eliminating the three conditions of killing, stealing, and carnality to ensure that the three basic causes do not arise, and so to stop the upsurge of Yagnadatta's madness and realize Bodhi, which thus does not come from outside. This, without a shadow of doubt, shows the causes and conditions, but why does the Tathagata throw them away completely? It is also due to causes and conditions that my mind has opened. World-honored one, I am not the only hearer, Sravaka, who, though still needing study and learning, has so awakened, but others in this assembly like Mahamodgalyayana, Sariputra, Subhuti, who followed the Brahmacharin, heard of the Buddha's teaching on causes and conditions, then awakened to the Dharma and achieved the state beyond transmigration. If you now say that Bodhi does not depend on causes and conditions, then the self-existent, as preached by the heretics in Rajagraha, such as Maskari, Gosaliputra, and others, would be nirvana. Will you be so compassionate enough to enlighten my delusion and perplexity? The Buddha said, Anand, in the case of Yagnadatta, if the so-called cause and condition of his madness had been wiped out, his own nature, which was not mad, would have revealed itself, and whatever you may rationalize about cause, condition, and self-existing does not go beyond this. Ananda, if Yagnadatta's head had basically been self-existent, it should always have been so and could not have been otherwise. What then were the cause and condition that resulted in his taking fright and going mad? If his self-existent head became mad owing to cause and condition, why was it not lost? But when he took fright and went mad, why was it still there unchanged? Thus how could cause and condition affect his head? If his madness was self-existent, it should always have been there before he became mad. Where was it hidden? And his madness was not self-existent, and there was nothing seriously wrong with his head. Why did he go mad? If you realize that his fundamental head was intact, you will know that only his consciousness became mad, and will realize that to talk of cause, condition, and self-existence is frivolous. This is why I say that if the three conditions of killing, stealing, and carnality are eliminated, this is Bodhi-mind. But the idea that Bodhi-mind is created after the samsaric mind has been annihilated pertains to samsara. Even after the idea of both creation and destruction have been abandoned, with no more thought of practice and realization, if the least belief in self-existence remains, this shows clearly that the death of the worldly has given birth to the self-existent mind, which also pertains to samsara with its implied opposite, self-existence. This is like the mixture and fusion of various worldly materials into a composite compound, which implies its opposite, the uncompounded. But the absolute, which is neither original nor unoriginal, neither mixed and united nor not mixed and not united, and neither apart nor not apart from union and separation, is above and beyond all sophistry. Bodhi and Nirvana are still very far away and cannot be attained without eons of practice and experience. Even if you succeed in memorizing the 12 divisions of the Mahayana canon taught by all the Buddhas, and the profound and perfect doctrines countless as the Ganga's sands, this will only increase sophistry. Although you speak of cause, condition, and self-existence as if you are very clear about them, and in spite of people calling you the first of those with a wide knowledge of the Dharma with its beneficial influence for eons past, you have been unable to avoid the pit into which Matangi fell. Why have you waited to be rescued from it by my Śūraṅgama mantra, which caused the girl to extinguish the fire of lust completely, to realize the state of anagamin, and to enter the dense forest of zeal and devotion? As the river of love dried up, you were delivered from bondage. Therefore, Ananda, your memorizing and remembering the Tathagata's profound and wonderful teaching for successive eons cannot compare with one day's practice of the transcendental path, which has enabled you to avoid suffering from both love and hate. Matangi was a prostitute, but she gave up lust and desire with the aid of the mantra, thereby becoming a bhikshuni called self-nature in this assembly. Both she and Yasodhara, the mother of my eldest son Rahul, awoke to sufferings caused by desire and love in their previous lives, and in a flash of thought practiced the transcendental way. One was freed from bonds, and the other received my prediction of her future enlightenment. Why do you still deceive yourself by clinging to what you see and hear? Self-enlightenment. Objects contemplated in meditative studies. After hearing the Buddha's teaching, Ananda and the assembly, now rid of doubt and illusion, awoke to reality and felt a lightness of body and mind which they had never experienced before. Ananda again wept, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, knelt down, brought his palms together, and said, "O peerless, compassionate, and immaculate King of treasures, you have opened up my mind so well by using all kinds of expedients and encouragement to lead me out of darkness in the ocean of suffering. World-honored one, after hearing your Dharma voice, although I realize that the bright mind or absolute Bodhi of the Tathagata store pervades the 10 directions to bring all the lands therein to the pure and majestic kingdom of absolute enlightenment, the Buddha again blames my useless knowledge acquired by listening, which cannot compare with true practice and training. I am like a traveler who is suddenly given by the King of Heaven a splendid mansion, which now that he owns it, he should know how to enter. May the Tathagata not forsake his great compassion, and may he teach all the deluded in this assembly how to give up the small vehicle and how to develop their minds in order to attain to ultimate nirvana, so that those who still need study and learning may know how to overcome their clinging to casual phenomena in order to achieve perfect control, tarani, and enter the Buddha's all wisdom." After saying this, he prostrated himself and reverently awaited the holy teaching. The Buddha took pity on the Sravakas and Pratyaka Buddhas in the assembly, whose minds set on enlightenment were still not at ease, and also on future living beings in the Dharma ending age, who will want to develop their Bodhi minds and to tread the path of supreme vehicle. He said to Ananda and the assembly, "As you are determined to develop the Bodhi mind and practice the Tathagata Samadhi tirelessly, you should first ascertain the two decisive factors in the development of your mind. What are they? The subjective mind in the meditation. Anand, as you decide to give up the state of Sravaka to practice with Bodhisattva's vehicle in order to possess the Buddha's all wisdom, you should see clearly if the cause ground used as a point of departure and its fruit ground, that is realization, are compatible or not. Ananda, if you use your worldly mind as a casual point of departure, you will fail in your search for Buddha vehicle, which is beyond birth and death. Therefore, you should inquire into all the creations of the mind, which in this material world are subject to change and destruction. Ananda, which one of them does not decay? Yet you have never heard that space can perish. Why? Because it is not a created thing. The objective phenomena in the meditation. In your body, that which is solid is the element of earth, that which is liquid is the element of water, that which is warm is the element of fire, and that which moves is the element of wind. These four restraining elements divide your pure, perfect, absolute, and enlightened body into seeing, hearing, knowing, and discerning, hence the five turbid conditions, kasaya, from the beginning to the end. What is turbidity? Ananda, take for instance clear water, which is so by nature, and dust, earth, ashes, and sand, which are obstructive by nature. If someone throws earth and dust into clear water, the former will lose their obstructive qualities, and the latter is clearness. The result is dirty water, which is called turbid. Your five turbid conditions are like that dirty water. Ananda, when you see space in the 10 directions, your perception and the void are inseparable. And since the void is bodiless and your perception unenlightened, both unite into one falseness, which is the first layer called turbid kalpa. Your body is made of four elements which limit your mind and divide it into seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing. The union of water, fire, wind, and earth with your feeling and knowing begets another falseness, which is the second layer called turbid views. Your recollections and habits give rise to intellection, which responds to the sixth sense data. This intellect has no independent form apart from the objects of sense and is devoid of nature apart from perception. It unites with sense data to become another falseness, which is the third layer called turbid passions, klesha. In the endless rise and fall of illusions in samsara, your intellect is intent on staying in the world, whereas your karma forces you to transmigrate from place to place. They thus unite into another falseness, which is the fourth layer called turbid being. Fundamentally, your seeing and hearing are by nature the same, but being limited by sense data, they degenerate into two separate faculties. They are aware of each other within their common nature, but differ in their functions. As a result, they are, as it were, upside down and unite into another falseness, which is the fifth layer called turbid life, the point of departure. Ananda, if you wish to bring your seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing into line with the Tathagata's absolute eternity, bliss, self, and purity, you should first pick out the root of birth and death and turn its worldly falseness back to its unworldly profound nature until it is subdued and reverts to basic bodhi. And then use this pure nature as the casual mind ground, as the point of departure to perfect your practice and realization of the fruit ground. This is like purifying muddy water in a clean container, left unshaken in complete calmness. The sand and the mud will sink to the bottom. When the clear water appears, this is called the first suppression of the intruding evil elements of passion. When the mud has been removed, leaving behind only the clear water, this is called the permanent cutting off of basic ignorance. Enlightenment is pure and unmixed, and its manifestations are not of the nature of klesha, but are in accord with the immaculate virtues of nirvana. Looking into the roots of klesha to find the sense organ suitable for meditation. What is the second decisive factor? In your determination to develop the bodhi mind and to advance boldly along the bodhisattva path by relinquishing everything worldly, you should look closely into the origin of klesha, caused by your basic ignorance and developing discrimination, and see who creates and endures them. Ananda, in your cultivation of bodhi, if you do not inquire into the root of klesha, you will never know how and where the organs and sense data are turned upside down. If you fail to understand this, how can you overcome them to win the Tathagata stage? And then, if a man who is good at untying knots does not see them, how can he undo them? And you have never heard that the void can be unfastened, for it has neither form nor shape, and is not like a knot that can be untied. But your eyes, ears, nose, and tongues, as well as your body and mind, are the 6 decoys which a thief uses to steal the treasure of your house. For this reason, since the time without beginning, living beings and this world have always been interlocked in time and space, hence you are unable to leap beyond the material world. Anand, what is this realm of time and space? Time means duration, and space, location. You know that the 10 directions are in space, and that the past, present, and future are in time. There are 10 directions of space and 3 aspects of time. All living beings owe their bodies to illusory time and space, which are interwoven within them and continues to affect them. Although there are 10 directions, the worldly man recognizes only the east, west, south, north, and cardinal points, but disregards the intermediate ones and the zenith and the nadir, which he considers as unimportant. The entanglement of the 3 times with the 4 cardinal points, or of the 4 cardinal points with the 3 times, results in the constant 12. Allowing for the change and transformation of discriminative thoughts occurring thrice to cover the past, present, and future, this constant is increased from 1 to 10,000 and 100, and 1,000 to cover the whole field of activity of each of the 6 sense organs, its maximum sum of merits, its potential function being represented by the number 1,200. Ananda, now measure the potentiality for merit of each organ. For instance, your eyes can see things in front and on both sides, but nothing behind you. Its incomplete field of activity represents only 2/3 of the maximum, that is only 800 merits. As to your ears, their field of activity includes all the 10 directions. A sound is heard, whether near or distant, while silence is registered as being boundless. Hence, this organ earns the full 1,200 merits. The function of your nose relies on in and out breaths, which lack a common point of contact. Hence, it earns only 800 merits. When your tongue propagates mundane and supramundane wisdoms, though language is restricted, the meaning is inexhaustible. Hence, this organ registers all the 1,200 merits. When your body feels that it is touched, this feeling exists when there is touch but vanishes in its absence. Hence, your body has only 800 merits. As intellect embraces both the mundane and supramundane of the past, present, and future in the 10 directions, including all the worldly and saintly without limits, you should know that this organ earns the full 1,200 merits. Ananda, as you now wish to go against the samsaric current of desire, you should revert to the very organ from which it flows until you reach the state beyond birth and death. Therefore, you should look into the 6 functioning organs and see which one is consistent or not, is deep or shallow, and is all penetrating or deficient. If you find that all-pervading organ, you should turn back its karmic flow so that it accords with its penetrating quality. The difference between realization by means of this penetrating organ and that through a deficient one is comparable to that between a day and an eon. I have now revealed to you the 6 organs arising from your true mind and their respective potentialities, so that you can choose the one most suitable to you and advance in your practice. All the Tathagatas practice self-cultivation through the 18 realms of sense to realize Supreme Bodhi. To them, all these 18 objects of meditation were suitable for their practice, but your quality is inferior and you are unable to use them to win supreme wisdom. This is why I now teach you to choose a suitable organ for your deep meditation. Once you have entered it and freed yourself from illusion, all your 6 organs will become pure and clean simultaneously. Ananda asked, World-honored one, how can one, by going against the samsaric current, enter deep into a single sense organ so as to ensure that all the 6 senses become pure and clean simultaneously? The Buddha replied, although you have realized the state of stream entry, srota apana, and wiped out worldly views, you are still not yet clear about the inner thoughts that have accumulated since the time without beginning, the elimination of which can be made only by practice and training. Still less are you clear about the inner illusions of birth, stage, change, and death to be wiped out during the successive stages of bodhisattva development. Now look at your 6 organs. Are they 1 or 6? Ananda, if they're 1, why cannot you see with your ears, hear with your eyes, walk with your head, and speak with your feet? If they are 6, then as I expound the profound dharma, which one of them receives my instruction? Ananda said, I use my ears to listen to it. The Buddha said, if so, your ears should have no relation with your body and mouth when your mouth asks for its meaning and your body stands up to receive it reverently. Therefore, they are neither 1 ending in 6 nor 6 ending in 1. In other words, basically your sense organs are neither 1 nor 6. Ananda, you should realize that the organs are neither 1 nor 6, and that because you have been seeing everything upside down since the time without beginning, the illusion of 1 and 6 have arisen from that which is perfect and clean. Although your attainment of the state of srota apana has wiped out the illusory concept of 6, you still retain that of 1. This is like the void contained in different vessels and called by different names according to the shapes of the containers. If you throw away the vessels and look at the void, you will say that it is 1. But how can the void follow your discrimination to become 1 or many? Still less can it become 1 or none. So your 6 active organs are like the void in different containers. Because of light and darkness, which alternate with, and reveal each other, their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in perception, the essence of which reflects forms and unites with them to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine elements of earth, water, fire, and wind, and is called an eye, which is shaped like a grape. Hence, the organ of perception is in constant search of forms. Besides, the conditions of disturbance and stillness contrast with each other. Their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in hearing, the essence of which echoes with sound and unites with it to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine element and is called an ear, which is shaped like a young rolled leaf. Hence, this organ of perception is in constant search of sound. Because of the 2 alternating conditions of clearness and obstruction, their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in smelling, the essence of which responds to odor and absorbs it to become a sense organ. Because of the 2 alternating conditions of clearness and obstruction, their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in smelling, the essence of which responds to odor and absorbs it to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine elements and is called a nose, which is shaped like the claw end of a hammer. Hence, this organ of perception is in constant search of smell. Because of changing and unchanging conditions, their additions to the wondrous perfect mind results in tasting, the essence of which responds to flavor and absorbs it to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine elements and is called a tongue, which is shaped like a crescent moon. Hence, this organ of perception is in constant search of taste. Because of the alternative conditions of contact and separation, their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in feeling, the essence of which responds to touch and unites with it to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine element and is called a body, which is shaped like a trunk, narrow in the center. Hence, this organ of perception is in constant search of touch. Because of the 2 successive states of creation and destruction, their addition to the wondrous perfect mind results in knowing, the essence of which clings to dharma and unites with them to become a sense organ. This organ originally comes from the 4 fine element and is called an intellect, which is like perception hidden in a dark room. Hence, this organ of perception is in constant search of dharma. Thus, Ananda, the 6th sense organ caused the enlightened body to become subjective awareness, so that it misses its essence by clinging to falseness. This is why there is no substance of seeing in the absence of both light and darkness. no substance of hearing without both stillness and disturbance, no nature of smelling in the absence of clearance and obstruction, no taste without changing and unchanged conditions, no feeling of touch beyond contact and separation, and no prop for knowing in the absence of creation and destruction. You have only not to follow the states of stillness and disturbances, of contact and separation, of changing and unchanged condition, of clearance and obstruction, of creation and destruction, and of light and darkness. And from these 12 worldly conditions, just root out any one of your 6 sense organs to disengage it from both inner and outer addition. As soon as it is subdued and brought back to the zeal, the latter's light will appear. When the bright nature manifests, the other 5 additions will be completely rooted out, and you will be free from wrong views created by the sense data. This light does not follow the sense organs but manifests through them, and so all the 6 organs function through each other. Ananda, do not you see in this assembly Aniruddha, who is blind but sees, Upananda, who is deaf but hears, the goddess of the Ganges, which is noseless but smells, Gavampati, who does not taste with his tongue, and the god of Sunyata, who has no body but feels touch. This god of the void appears temporarily in the Tathagata light, since his body is like air and does not exist materially. He has realized stillness, dhyana, derived from the elimination of the second and the third aggregates, thereby achieving the peace of the Sravaka stage. As Mahakashapa, who is here, succeeded long ago in rooting out the organ of intellect, thereby realizing perfect knowledge, which does not derive from the thinking process. Mahakashapa succeeded long ago in rooting out organ of intellect, thereby realizing perfect knowledge, which does not derive from the thinking process. Ananda, if all your sense organs are rooted out, your inner light will appear. If all your sense organs are rooted out, your inner light will appear. All transient sense data as well as the changing conditions of the material world will vanish, like ice melted by boiling water, and you will realize supreme Bodhi instantly. Anand, if a man who sees with his eyes suddenly closes them, darkness will appear before him, screening all his 6 sense organs, including his head and feet. If he then feels his body with his hands, he will discern his head and feet, although he does not see them. This shows that his knowing is the same whether he sees something in the light or nothing in the dark. That which does not rely on the light to manifest is not affected by darkness. After all organs and sense data have been vanished, why cannot you realize the perfect and absolute enlightened Bodhi? Expedient instruction on the one mind. Anand said, World-honored one, as the Buddha has said, the casual body used as the point of departure in quest of reality should be compatible with the fruit ground. World-honored one, though realization of the fruit ground is called by 7 different names, Bodhi, Nirvana, the absolute, Buddha nature, immaculate knowledge, Amala Vijnana, immaterial Tathagata store, the great mirror wisdom, it is pure, clean, and perfect, and its substance does not change, like the royal diamond, which is permanent and indestructible. Now the faculties of seeing and hearing have no independent nature in the absence of brightness and darkness, stillness and motion, and clearance and obstruction, and are like the thinking mind to cease to exist in the absence of sense data. How can they be used as the point of departure in search for the Tathagata's 7 permanent fruits? World-honored one, seeing ceases to exist in the absence of light and darkness, like the thinking mind, which comes to an end when there are no external phenomena. As I look into all this, I search in vain for my mind and its objects. What then should I set up as the cause in my quest of supreme Bodhi? Does the Tathagata's previous teaching on nature of seeing, which is profound, pure, perfect, and permanent, contradict your true words and become sophistry as well? Will you please be compassionate enough to clear away my delusion and perplexity? The Buddha said, You have widened your knowledge by hearing, but have failed to get out of the stream of transmigration completely. Though you know the cause of your upset, yet when you find yourself in the presence of that cause, you fail to recognize it. Lest your truthfulness remains incomplete, I will now do something to clear away your doubts and suspicion. The Buddha then ordered Rahul to ring a bell and asked Ananda, Do you hear it? Ananda and all others in the assembly replied that they did. When the bell was no more heard, the Buddha asked again, Do you still hear it? Then they all replied they did not. Rahul again rang the bell. And Buddha asked, Do you hear it? They replied that they did. The Buddha then asked Ananda, What do you mean by hearing and not hearing? What do you mean by hearing and not hearing? Anand and others replied, If the bell is rung, we call it hearing, and when the bell sound its echo stop, we call it not hearing. The Buddha again ordered Rahul to ring the bell and asked Anand, Is there any sound? Anand and the others replied that there was a sound of the bell. A little later, when it could no longer be heard, the Buddha asked again, Is there any sound? They all replied that there was none. Then Rahul rang the bell again. And the Buddha asked, Is there any sound? They all replied in this affirmative. The Buddha then asked Ananda, What do you mean by sound and no sound? Anand and others replied that if the bell was rung, there was a sound, and when both the sound and its echo stopped, this was called no sound. The Buddha said, Why do you talk so wildly? Anand and others asked, Why do you say that we talk wildly? The Buddha said, when I asked you about hearing, you spoke of hearing, and when I asked you about the sound, you spoke of it. So merely about hearing and sound, your answers were ambiguous. How could they not be called wild, Anand? When both the sound and its echo ceased, you said there was no hearing. If there really was no hearing, its nature would have died and would be like a withered log. But when the bell was rung again, how did you hear it? Existence and non-existence concern only the sound, which may be present or not. But how can the nature of your hearing follow your discrimination to exist or not? If it really ceased, who then knew there was no sound? Therefore, Anand, in your hearing, the sound may exist or not, but this does not mean that the sound, in your delusion, this does not mean, Anand, that the sound, whether heard or not, can cause your hearing to exist or not. In your delusion, you mistake the sound for your hearing, and so regard the permanent as transient. You should not say that hearing has no nature, when it exists apart from conditions of disturbance, stillness, obstruction, and clearance. For instance, when a man sleeps soundly, if people pound rice, he may hear the beating of a drum or the ringing of a bell. So when asleep, he may find it strange that the bell is like the beating of a piece of wood or stone. But if he suddenly wakes up and hears the pestle, he will tell his family about his mistake when asleep. Ananda, does that remember in his sleep the condition, stillness, disturbance, clearness, and obstruction? Although his body rests, the nature of his hearing is still present. Even when your body perishes and your life comes to an end, how can this nature vanish? For since the time without beginning, all living beings have followed forms and sounds and pursued the flow of their thoughts without awakening to the pure, profound, and permanent nature. By straying from the permanent and by following birth and death, they have been contaminated with defilements in successive lives. If you only keep away from samsara and dwell in real permanence, your eternal light will appear thereby, causing your organs, sense data, consciousness, and mad mind to vanish simultaneously. The objects of your thinking process are polluting dust, and the feelings that arise from your consciousness are impurities. If both are kept away, your dharma eye will appear pure and bright instantly. Why, then, cannot you realize Supreme Bodhi? Main instruction on the 3 meditative studies of the one mind. Ananda said, World-honored one, although the Tathagata has taught the second decisive point in the development of the mind, I think if the man, good at uniting knots, does not know how they came to be tied, he will be unable to undo them. In this assembly, I and those who need to study and learn more are in the same case. Since the time without beginning, we and our delusions have both been subject to birth and death, and although we have cultivated good qualities that have enabled us to widen our knowledge by hearing about it all, and so are called leavers of homes, we are like a person suffering from malaria which recurs every other day. Will you take pity on us and save us from drowning? Will you tell us which of our bodies and minds are in a knot and how to untie it so that all suffering brings can escape from samsara and avoid falling again into the 3 realms of existence? After saying this, he and all the assembly prostrated themselves, shed bitter tears, and eagerly awaited the Buddha's supreme revelation. The Buddha took pity on Ananda and those in the assembly who still needed to study and learn, as well as on future living beings, in order to enable them to sow the cause of their future appearance in the world as teachers, and so become the eye of wisdom to guide among generations. He extended his shining, golden-hued hand to touch Ananda's head and comfort him. Thereupon, all Buddha lands in the 10 directions shook 6 times, and Tathagatas, countless as motes of dust, sent out from the tops of their heads radiant rays of light, which reached Jetavata to shine upon the Buddha's head. This had not been seen before by the assembly. Then Ananda and all those present heard countless Buddhas declare with one voice, Excellent, Ananda, excellent. If you want to know about the innate ignorance that causes you to transmigrate in samsara, you should know that the roots of your birth and death are your 6 sense organs. If you want to know about Supreme Bodhi, it is like 6 organs that will enable you to speedily realize happiness in liberation and permanence in nirvana. Although Ananda had heard these dharma voices, he was still not clear about their profound meaning. So he bowed and asked the Buddha, How can the 6 organs cause me to transmigrate in samsara and be happy in absolute nirvana? The Buddha said, Ananda, both organs and their objects spring from the same source. Bondage and liberation are not 2 different things. Consciousness is illusory like a flower in the sky. Ananda, your knowing originates from each phenomena which takes on form because of your sense organs. Both form and seeing are mutually dependent, like 2 bundles of rushes that stand by leaning against each other. Therefore, if your intellect acts as the knower, this is the root of your ignorance. But if it is free from seeing, it will be nirvana, which is transcendental and pure. How then can the latter allow foreign elements to intrude? To repeat his instruction, the Buddha read the following gatha. True nature is free from all phenomena. True nature is free from all phenomena, which are illusions by causes created. Nomena neither rise nor fall, but all phenomena are flowers in the sky. The unreal reveals the real, but both are but illusions. True nature is free from all phenomena, which are illusions by causes created. Noumena neither rise nor fall, but all phenomena are flowers in the sky. The unreal reveals the real, but both are but illusions. Since there is nothing real nor unreal, how can there be a subject and an object? For between the two, there is no true nature like. The point where two rush bundles meet, when set upright, tying and untying, from the same cause arise. While the saintly and the worldly are not dual, consider underlying nature at the point of meeting where both is and is not cannot be. If you disregard it, you are in delusion. If you awaken to it, you are free at once. 6 knots are untied, one after the other. When 6 are undone, one vanishes as well. Choose an organ that is all-penetrating to enter the holy stream and attain Bodhi. All habits flow like torrents in alaya, subtle consciousness. Since the real yet unreal can create confusion, I have refrained from revealing it to you. Since the real yet unreal can create confusion, I have refrained from revealing it to you. If mind be set on searching for the mind, that which at heart is not illusion becomes illusory. If you stop all grasping, then there is nothing real. If what is not illusion ceases to arise, where can illusion be? This is the profound lotus dharma law, the precious bodhi of the royal gem, the samadhi of seeing all things as illusion, which in a finger snap leads to the state beyond all study. The unsurpassed doctrine was followed by all Bhagavats in all directions, on the one path that to nirvana leads. How to untie these 6 knots? Thus Ananda and the assembly listened to the compassionate Buddha's unsurpassed sermon in Gatha, whose profound meanings were so enlightening and penetrating that their mental eyes were opened. They praised what they had never seen before. Ananda then brought his palms together, prostrated, and said, I have today listened to the Buddha's compassionate teaching, which revealed the pure, subtle, and permanent reality of the self-nature. But I am still not clear about how to untie the 6 knots, one after the other, and what you meant by when the 6 knots are undone, the one also vanishes. Will you again pity on this assembly and future generations and teach us in order to wash our defilement away? The Buddha, who was on his lion seat, adjusted his inner garments and outer robe and took away the teepoi, a piece of beautiful cloth, which the Yamadeva had given him. Then, in the presence of the assembly, he tied a knot and showed it to Ananda, asking, What is this? Ananda and others replied, It is a knot. The Buddha then tied another knot and asked, What is this? They all replied, This is also is a knot. The Buddha tied 4 more knots, showing each to Ananda and asking, What is this? They all replied that each was a knot. The Buddha said to Ananda, When I first tied this cloth, you called it a knot. There is only one piece of cloth, but why did you call the second and third ties also knots? Ananda replied, World Honor One, although there is only one piece of cloth, if you tie it once, there will be a knot, and if you tie it 100 times, there will be 100 knots. But this cloth has only 6 knots because you only tied it 6 times. Why do you agree to my calling the first tie a knot and disagree to the second and third ones also being called knots? The Buddha said, Ananda, originally there was only one piece of cloth, but when I tied it 6 times, there were 6 knots. As you see it, the length of cloth was the same before, but it now different. With its 6 knots. The 6th knot I tied was called the first one, and altogether I tied 6 of them. Do you think that the 6th one can be called the first knot? Ananda replied, No, Honored One. So long as there are 6 knots, the last one is the 6th and cannot be called the first. Even if I discuss this for the rest of my life, how can I number these 6 knots in the wrong order? The Buddha said, It is so. These 6 knots are different, but come from one length of cloth, and you cannot reverse their order. It is the same with your 6 sense organs, which, though coming from the same source, are manifestly different. Ananda, clearly you object to the 6 knots and prefer one piece of cloth, but how can you obtain it? Ananda replied, If these 6 knots remain, concepts of right and wrong will arise in great confusion. With such things as this knot is not but one, and that knot is not this one, World Honored One, if all the knots were untied, there would still remain nothing. With complete elimination of thisness and thatness, then in the absence of even one, how can there be 6? Then Buddha said, Likewise, when the 6 knots are untied, the one also vanishes. It is because of confusion in your mad mind, since the time without beginning, that your intellect gives rise to illusions. Thus, unceasing creation of such which disturbs your seeing and causes it to perceive objects in the same way that troubles your eyes see dancing flowers. Hence, in the clear and bright reality, arise without any cause all worldly phenomena, such as mountains, rivers, the great earth, samsara, and nirvana, which are but dancing flowers created by confusions, trouble, passions, and inversions. Ananda asked, How can one untie these knots created by trouble and confusion? Then the Buddha held up the piece of cloth, pulled its left end, and asked, Can it be untied in this way? Ananda replied, No, World Honored One. The Buddha then pulled the right end and asked, Can it be untied in this way? Ananda replied, No, World Honored One. The Buddha said, I have pulled both ends of the cloth, but have been unable to untie the knots. What will you do now, Ananda? Replied. World Honored One, each knot should be untied in its center heart. The Buddha said, correct. Ananda, correct. A knot should be untied from its heart. Ananda. Ananda, the Buddha Dharma, which I expound, manifests due to causes and is beyond those coarse forms that come from worldly concepts of mixtures and unions. When the Buddha reveals the mundane and supramundane, he knows their chief causes and concurrent conditions. He is even clear about the number of drops of rain in a place as many miles away from here as there are sand grains in the Ganges, as well as why pine trees arc straight and brambles crooked, geese white and crows black. Therefore, Ananda, choose one organ from the six, and if its knot is untied, all objects of sense will vanish of themselves. When all illusions disappear, if this is not reality, what more do you expect? Ananda, tell me now if the 6 knots of this cloth can be untied simultaneously? Ananda replied, no, World Honored One, because they were originally tied, one after the other, and should be untied in the same order, although they are in the same piece of cloth. They were not tied simultaneously. How can they now be untied all at once? The Buddha said, your 6 organs should be disengaged in the same way. When you begin to disentangle them, you will realize that the ego is void. When this voidness is perfectly clear, you will realize that all dharma phenomena are void. When you are disengaged from dharma, the voidness of ego dharma will vanish. This is called patience, endurance of uncreate achieved by means of samadhi in the bodhisattva stage. After Ananda and the assembly had heard the Buddha's teaching, their understanding was clear and free from doubt and suspicion. Ananda brought his palms together, prostrated himself, and said, today our bodies and minds are clear, at ease, and unhindered. Though I have understood what you mean by the disappearance of both 1 and 6, I am still unable to perfect my sense organs. World Honored One, I am like a lonely wanderer and hapless orphan. How fortunate have I been to meet the Buddha and to be his relative, like a hungry baby who suddenly meets its suckling mother. This gives me a chance to attain the holy goal, but although I have listened to his profound words, I am still unawakened, as if I had not heard them. Will you please reveal to me the ultimate approach by means of the appropriate organ? After saying this, he prostrated himself and concentrated on his inner potentiality to receive the profound instruction. Thereat the World Honored One said to the great Bodhisattvas and chief Arahats in the assembly, I want to ask you, Bodhisattvas and Arahats, who have practiced my dharma and have reached the state beyond study, this question. When you developed your minds to awaken to the 18 fields of sense, which one did you regard as the best means of perfection, and by what methods did you enter the state of samadhi? Meditation on the 6 sense data. Kaundinya, one of the first 5 bhikshus, rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, when soon after his enlightenment we met the Tathagata in the Mrigadaba and Kukuta park, I heard his voice, understood his teaching, and awakened to the 4 noble truths. When questioned by the Buddha, I interpreted them correctly, and the Tathagata sealed my awakening by naming me as Nata, thorough knowledge. As his wonderful voice was mysteriously all-embracing, I attained arhatship by means of sound. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, sound is the best according to my personal experience. Upanishad then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, I also met the Buddha soon after his enlightenment. After meditating on impurity, which I found repulsive and from which I awakened to the underlying nature of all forms. I realized that even our bleached bones that came from impurity would be reduced to dust and would finally return to the void. As both form and the void were perceived as non-existent, I achieved the state beyond study. The Tathagata sealed my understanding and named me Nisad. After eradicating the relative form, wonderful form, Surupa, appeared mysteriously all-embracing. Thus I attained arhatship through meditation on form. As Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me form is the best according to my personal experience. A bodhisattva named Fragrance Adorned then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, after the Tathagata had taught me to look into all worldly phenomena, I left him and retired to set my mind at rest. While observing the rules of pure living, I saw the bhikshus burn sandal incense. In the stillness, its fragrance entered my nostrils. I inquired into the smell, which was neither sandalwood nor voidness, and neither smoke nor fire, and which had neither whence to come nor whither to go. Thereby my intellect vanished, and I achieved the state beyond the stream of transmigration. The Tathagata sealed my awakening and named me Fragrance Adorned. After the sudden elimination of relative smell, the wonderful fragrance became mysteriously all-embracing. Thus I attained the arhatship by means of smell. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, smell is the best, according to my personal experience. The 2 bodhisattvas called Vaisajya Raja and Vaisajya Samudgata, who were present with 500 Brahmadevas, then rose from their seats, prostrated themselves with their heads at the feet of Buddha, and declared, since the time without beginning we have been skillful physicians in the world, and have tasted with our own mouths herbs, plants, and all kinds of mineral and stone found in the world, saha, numbering 108,000 in all. As a result, we know perfectly their taste, whether bitter, sour, salt, insipid, sweet, acrid, their natural changing or harmonizing properties, and whether they are cooling, heating, poisoning, or wholesome. We received instructions from the Tathagata and knew clearly that taste was neither existing nor non-existent, was neither body nor mind, and did not exist apart from them. Since we could discern the cause of taste, we achieved our awakening, which was sealed by Buddha, who then named us Paisajya Raja and Paisajya Samudgata. We are now ranked among the sons of Dharma King in this assembly, and because of our awakening by means of taste, we have attained the Bodhisattva stage. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to us taste is the best according to our personal experience. Bhadrapala, who was with the 16 companions, who were all great bodhisattvas, rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, when the Buddha, with an awe-inspiring voice, Bhasma Garjita Ghosa Swara Raja appeared in the world. It's a Bhishma Garjita Ghosa Swara Raja. I heard of the Dharma and left home. At the time of bathing, I followed the rules and entered the bathroom. Suddenly, I awakened to the casual water, which cleans neither dirt nor body. Thereby, I felt at ease and realized the state of nothingness. As I had not forgotten my former practice, when I left home to follow the Buddha in my present life, I achieved the state beyond study. That Buddha named me Bhadrapala because of my awakening to wonderful touch and my realization of the rank of a son of Buddha. And the Buddha asked now about the best means of perfection. To me, touch is the best according to my personal experience. Mahakakshapa, who was present with the Bhikshuni Golden Light, and others of his group, then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, in a former eon, when Chandrasurya Pradipa Buddha appeared in this world, I had a chance of following him and of hearing the Dharma which I practiced. After he had passed away, I revered his relics, lit lamps to perpetuate his light, and decorate his statue with pure gold powder. Since then, in every subsequent reincarnation, my body has been radiant with perfect golden light. This Bhikshuni Golden Light and others who are with her are my retinue, because we develop the same mind at the same time. I looked into the 6 changing sense data, which can be reduced to complete extinction only through the state of nirvana. Thus, my body and mind were able to pass through hundreds and thousands of eons in a finger snap. By eradicating all dharma, things and ideas, I realized arhatship, and the world-honored one declared that I was the foremost disciplinarian. I awakened to the wonderful dharma, thereby putting an end to the stream of transmigration. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, dharma are the best according to my personal experience. Meditation on the 5 sense organs. Aniruddha then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, after I left home, I was always very fond of sleep, and the Tathagata scolded me, saying that I was like an animal. After this severe reprimand, I wept bitterly and blamed myself. Because of my sadness, I did not sleep for 7 successive nights and went completely blind. Then the world-honored one taught me how to take delight in the enlightening Vajra Samadhi, which enabled me to perceive, not with my eyes, but my mind, the pure truth pervading the 10 directions, very clearly perceptible, as easy to see as a mango held in my own hand. The Tathagata sealed my attainment of arhatship. As he now asks about the best means of perfection, to me seeing is, according to my personal experience, the best which is made possible by turning the organ of sight back to its source. Chudrapantaka then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I did not know much about the Dharma for want of reading and reciting the scriptures. When I first met the Buddha, I heard of the Dharma and then left home. I tried to memorize a line of his Gatha, but failed for 100 days, because as soon as I could retain its first words, I forget the last ones, and when I could remember the last words, I forget the first ones. The Buddha took pity on my stupidity and taught me how to live in a quiet retreat and to regularize my breathing. At the time, I looked exhaustively into each in and out breathing and realized that its rise, stay, change, and end lasted only an instant, chana. Thereby, my mind became clear and unhindered until I stepped out of the stream of transmigration and finally attained arhatship. I came to stay with Buddha, who sealed my realization of state beyond study. As he now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, breathing is the best according to my personal experience in turning the breath back to the condition of nothingness. Davampati then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, because of my verbal sin, when I trifled with monks in a former eon, in every succeeding reincarnation, I have been born with a mouth that always chews the cud like a cow. The Tathagata taught me the pure and clean doctrine of one mind, which enabled me to eliminate the conception of mind for my entry into the state of samadhi. I looked into tasting, realized that it was neither a subjective substance nor an objective thing, and leaped beyond the stream of transmigration. I thereby disengaged myself from both the inner body and mind and outer universe, and was released from the 3 worlds of existence. I was like a bird escaping from its cage, thus avoiding impurities and defilements. With my dharma, I now pure and clean, I attained arhatship, and the Tathagata personally sealed my realization of the stage beyond study. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, the turning of taste back to its knower is the best according to my personal experience. Pilindavatsa then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, when I first followed the Buddha to enter upon the path, very often I heard the Tathagata speak about the worldly which could not give joy and happiness. One day I went to town to beg for food. and as I was thinking about his teaching, I stepped inadvertently on a poisonous thorn that pierced my foot and caused me to feel pain all over my body. I thought of my body, which knew and felt this great pain. Although there was this feeling, I looked into my pure and clean mind, which no pain could affect. I also thought, how can this one body of mine have two sorts of feeling? And after short mental concentration on this, all of a sudden, my body and mind seemed to be non-existent, and 3 weeks later, I achieved the stage beyond the stream of transmigration and thereby attained Arahantship. The Buddha personally sealed my realization of the stage beyond the study. As he now asks about the best means of perfection, to me, the pure awareness that wipes out the conception of body is the best according to my personal experience. Subhuti then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, as my mind was already free from all hindrances in former eons, I can now remember my previous reincarnations as countless as the sands in the Gangas. Even when I was fetus in my mother's womb, I had already awakened to the condition of still voidness, which subsequently expanded to fill all the 10 directions, and which enabled me to teach living beings how to awaken to their absolute nature. Thanks to the Tathagata, I realized the absolute voidness of self-nature awareness, and with the perfection of my immaterial nature, I attained Arahantship, thereby entering suddenly into Tathagata's precious brightness, which was as immense as space and the ocean, wherein I partially achieved Buddha knowledge. The Buddha sealed my attainment of the stage beyond study. I am, therefore, regarded as the foremost disciple because of my understanding of immaterial self-nature. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection according to my personal experience, the best consists in perceiving the unreality of all phenomena with the elimination of even this unreality in order to reduce all things to nothingness. Meditation on the sixth consciousness. Sariputra then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, in former eons, the sight perception of a mind was already pure and clean, and in my subsequent incarnations, as countless as the sands in the Gangas, I could see without hindrance through all things, either on a worldly or a supramundane plane. One day I met on the road the two brothers, Kashyapa, who were both preaching the doctrine of causality. And after listening to them, my mind awakened to the truth and thereby became extensive and boundless. I then left home to follow the Buddha and achieved perfect sight perception, thereby acquiring fearlessness, attaining Arahantship, and qualifying as the Buddha's elder son, born from the Buddha's mouth and by transformation of the karma. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection according to my personal experience, the best consists in realizing the most illuminating knowledge by means of the mind's radiant sight perception. Samantabhadra Bodhisattva then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I was already a son of the Dharma king when formerly I was with the Tathagatas, who were countless as the sands in the Gangas. All the Buddhas in the 10 directions who teach their disciples to plant Bodhisattva roots urge them to practice Samantabhadra deeds, which are called after my name. World-honored one, I always use my mind to listen in order to distinguish the variety of views held by living beings. If in a place separated from here by a number of worlds as countless as the sands in Ganges, a living being practices Samantabhadra deeds, I mount at once a 6-tusked elephant and reproduced myself in 100 and 1,000 partitions to come to his aid. Even if he is unable to see me because of this great karmic obstruction, I secretly lay my hand on his head to protect and comfort him so that he can succeed. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, according to my personal experience, the best consists in hearing with the mind, which leads to non-discriminative discernment. Sudarshananda Sundarananda then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, when I left home to follow the Buddha, although fully ordained, I failed to realize the state of samadhi because my mind was always unsettled. I was therefore unable to reach the condition beyond the stream of transmigration. The world-honored one then taught me and Kaustilya to fix the mind on the tip of the nose. I started this meditation, and some 3 weeks later I saw that the breath that went in and out of my nostril was like smoke. Inwardly both body and mind were clear, and I looked through the external world, which became a pure emptiness like crystal everywhere. The smoke gradually disappeared, and my breath became white. As my mind opened, I achieved the state beyond the stream of transmigration. Both my in and out breath now bright illumined the 10 directions so that I attained the Arahat stage. The world-honored one prophesied that I would win enlightenment. As he now asks about the best means of perfection according to my personal experience, the best is to eliminate breath, which will then turn radiant, ensuring the attainment of stage of perfection beyond the stream of transmigration. Purna Maitrayani Putra then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, in former eons, my power of speech was unhindered, and I preached the doctrine of misery and unreality, thereby penetrating deep into the absolute reality. I also expounded in the assembly the Tathagata's dharma doors to enlightenment as unaccountable as the sands in the Gangas, and thereby won fearlessness. The world-honored one knew that I acquired the great power of speech and taught me how to perform the Buddha work by preaching. There, in his presence, I assisted him in turning the wheel of law, and since I could give the lion's roar, I attained Arahantship. I sealed my unexcelled skill in expounding the Dharma. As he now asks about the best means of perfection, according to my opinion, the best consists in employing the dharma voice to subdue the enmity of Mara and to stop the stream of transmigration. Upali then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, I personally accompanied the Buddha, and we climbed the city wall to flee from home. With my own eyes, I saw how he endured hardship in his practice during the first 6 years of ascetic life, subdued all demons, overcame heretics, and freed himself from worldly desires and all impure efflux, asrava, from the mind. He personally taught me discipline, including the 3,000 regulations and the 80,000 lines of conduct, which purified in all my innate and conventional subtle karmas as my body and mind were in the nirvanic state. I attained arahantship, and the Tathagata sealed my mind because of my strict observance of discipline and control of body. I am now a pillar of discipline in this assembly, and am regarded as the foremost disciple. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, in my opinion, the best consists in disciplining the body so that it can free itself from all restraints, and then in disciplining the mind so that it can be all-pervading, which results in the freedom of both body and mind. Mahamanta Kalyayana then arose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, One day I was begging for food in the street. I met the 3 Kashyapa brothers, Uruvilva, Gaya, and Nadi, who preached the profound doctrine of causality taught by the Tathagata. Suddenly my mind opened and became all-pervading. Then the Tathagata gave me a monk's robe, and when I wore it, my hair and beard fell out. I rambled in the 10 directions and met no obstruction. I thus acquired transcendental power, which proved the foremost and led to my attainment of arahantship. Not only the word-honored one, but all the Tathagatas in the 10 directions praised my supernatural powers, which were perfect, pure, sovereign, and fearless. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, in my opinion, the best consists of returning to stillness to allow the light of the mind to appear, just as muddy water by settling becomes pure and clean as crystal. Meditation on the 7 elements. Ushushma then came forward in front of the Tathagata, joined the palms of his 2 hands, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of Buddha, and declared, I can still remember that in a very remote eon I was filled with sensual desire. At the time a Buddha called the King of Immateriality appeared in the world. According to him, those with lustful desires increase their own hell fires. He then taught me to meditate on the bones in my body, on my 4 limbs, and on my warm and cold breaths. So by turning inwardly the spiritual light for pointed concentration, my lustful mind turned into the fire of wisdom. Since then I was called Firehead by all the Buddhas because of my powerful firelight samadhi. I attained arahantship. Then I took my great vow to become a demigod, Vira, so that when all Buddhas were about to attain enlightenment, I would personally help them to overcome the enmity of Maya, Mara. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, according to my opinion, the best consists in looking into the non-existent heat in my body and mind in order to remove all hindrances thereto and to put an end to the stream of transmigrations, so that the great precious fight can appear and lead us to realization of supreme Bodhi. Dharanim Dhara Bodhisattva then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that formerly when the Buddha of universal light appeared in the world, I was a bhikshu who used to level all obstacles, build bridges, and carry sands and earth to improve the main roads, ferries, rice fields, and dangerous passes, which were in bad condition or impassable to horses and carts. Thus I continued to toil for a long time, in which an uncountable number of Buddhas appeared in the world. If someone made a purchase at the marketplace and required another to carry it home for him, I did it without charge. When Buddha appeared in the world and famine was frequent, I became a carrier charging only 1 coin no matter whether the distance was long or short. If an ox cart could not move in a bog, I used my supernatural power to push its wheels free. One day the king invited that Buddha to a feast. As the road was bad, I leveled it for him. The Tathagata Vishabhu placed his hand on my head and said, You should level your mind ground, then all things in the world will be on the same level. Upon hearing this, my mind opened, and I perceived that the molecules of my body did not differ from those of which the world is made. These molecules were such that they did not touch one another and could not be touched even by sharp weapons. I then awakened to the patient endurance of the uncreate, and thereby attained arahantship. Then by turning my mind inwards, I realized the Bodhisattva stage, and when I heard the Tathagatas expound the Buddha's universal knowledge in the profound Lotus Sutra, I was first listener to be awakened to it, and was made a leader of the assembly. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of my perfection, in my opinion, the best consists in looking into the sameness of body and universe which are created by infection from falsehood arising from the Tathagata's door until this defilement vanishes and is replaced by perfect wisdom, which then leads to the realization of supreme Bodhi. Chandraprabha Bodhisattva then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that in the remotest of eons, countless as the sands in the Gangas, there was a Buddha called Varuna, who appeared in the world and taught Bodhisattvas to contemplate the elements of water in order to enter the state of Samadhi. This method consists in looking into the body wherein all watery elements do not by nature suppress one another, using as subjects of meditation first tears and snot, and then saliva, secretion, blood, urine, excrement, and then reversing the order, thereby perceiving that this element of water in the body does not differ from that of the fragrant oceans that surrounds the pure lands of Buddhas situated beyond our world. When I achieved this contemplation, I succeeded in realizing only the sameness of the element of water everywhere, but failed to relinquish my view of the body. I was then a bhikshu practicing dhyana, and when my disciple peeped into the room, he saw that it was filled entirely with clear water, without anything else. As he was an ignorant boy, he picked up a broken tile, threw it into the water with a splash, gazed curiously, and left. When I came out of my dhyana state, I suddenly felt pain in my heart, as if I had the same trouble with Sariputta, with a wicked demon. I thought, since I have realized arahantship, I should be free from all casual ailments. Why today, all of a sudden, have I pain in my heart? Is it not a sign of my backsliding? When the boy returned and related what he had seen and done during my meditation, I said, when next you see water in my room, open the door, enter the water, and take away the broken tile. The boy obeyed. For when I entered again the dhyana state, he saw the same broken tile in the water. He then opened the door and removed the tile. When I came out of dhyana, my pain had vanished. Later, I met countless Buddhas before I encountered Sagara Varadhara Buddhi Vikridita Vijna Buddha, under whose instruction I succeeded in relinquishing the conception of body, thereby realizing perfect union of this body and the fragrant oceans in the 10 directions with absolute voidness without any further differentiation. This is why I was called a son of a Buddha and was qualified to attend the all Bodhisattva meetings. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, in my opinion, the best consists in achieving the unhindered, universalizing pervasion of the element water, thereby realizing the patient endurance of the uncreate, which ensures complete enlightenment. The Bodhisattva of crystal light then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that once, in the remotest of the eons, countless as the sands of the Gangas, there was a Buddha called Infinite Voice, who appeared in the world to reveal to Bodhisattvas the profoundly enlightened fundamental awareness, which, by looking into the world and the bodily forms of all living beings, could perceive that all were created by the power of the wind arising from illusory concurrent causes. At the time, I inquired into the illusory setting up of the world, changing time, bodily motion, and motionlessness, stirring of mind, in other words, all kinds of movement, which were fundamentally the same and did not differ from one another. I then realized that these movements had neither whence to come nor whither to go, and that all living beings in the 10 directions, as uncountable as the dust, came from the same falsehood. Likewise, all living beings in every small world of a great Chilioscum were like mosquitoes in a trap in which they hung aimlessly and created a mad turmoil. Soon after meeting that Buddha, I realized the patient endurance of the uncreate. As my mind opened, I perceived the land of imperturbable Buddha in the eastern region, where I was admitted as a son of a Dharma king, serving all the Buddhas in the 10 directions. My body and mind gave out rays of light that illumined all the worlds without obstruction. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, in my opinion, the best consists in looking into the power of the element of wind, which has nothing real on which to rely, thereby awakening to the Bodhi mind, so as to enter Samadhi, and then to unite with the profound one mind expounded by the Buddhas in the 10 directions. Akasagarbha Bodhisattva then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, when the Tathagata and I were with Dipankara Buddha and realized our boundless bodies, I held in my hands 4 big precious gems, which illumined all Buddha lands in the 10 directions, as uncountable as dust, and transmuted them into the absolute void. Then my own mind appeared like a great mirror, emitting 10 kinds of mysterious precious light, which penetrated the 10 directions, reaching the boundaries of space, and causing all pure lands of Buddhas to enter the mirror, and then to intermingle free with my own body, which was just like a unobstructed space. Then my body could enter perfectly as many samsaric countries as there are grains of dust to carry out far and wide the Buddha works of salvation, so that universalities could prevail everywhere. This great transcendental power derived from my close inquiry into the 4 elements, which had nothing real to rely upon, and into false thinking that rose and fell alternatively and ended in nothingness. I realized the non-duality of space and the sameness of Buddha's pure lands and samsaric worlds, thereby achieving the patience, endurance of the uncreate. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, according to my own experience, the best consists in the close examination into boundless space, leading entry into Samadhi, and perfecting thereby the mysterious spiritual power. Maitreya Bodhisattva then rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that in the remotest of eons, as uncountable as the dust, there was a Buddha called Sandrasurya Pradipa, who appeared in the world to convert others. I followed him to leave home. However, I still cherished worldly fame and like to mix with noble clans. Then the Tathagata taught me how to practice dhyana meditation on the mind's consciousness in order to realize the state of samadhi. Ever since the following eons, I have used the samadhi to serve Buddhas as many as the sands in Ganges, thereby eliminating completely my previous mindset on worldly fame. When the Bhankara Buddha appeared in the world, under his instruction, I realized the consciousness perfecting supreme samadhi of the mind, which enabled me to perceive that all Tathagata stores and samsaric worlds, purity and impurity and existence and non-existence, were but appearances caused by my own mind's transformations. World-honored one, because of my clear understanding that only the mind's consciousness was the cause of all externals, I perceived an unlimited number of Tathagatas coming out of the nature of consciousness, hence the Buddha's prophecy that I shall be his successor. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, my opinion is that the best consists of close examination into all appearances which are created by consciousness, only in order to perfect the conscious mind, thereby realizing complete reality and ensuring non-reliance on externals and the breaking of all attachment caused by discrimination, thereby achieving the patient endurance of the uncreate. Mahastama, a son of the Dharma king, who was the head of a group of 52 bodhisattvas, rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that in the remotest of eons, countless as the sands in the Ganges, there was a Buddha called Amitabha, who was succeeded by 11 other Tathagatas in that kalpa. The last one was called the Buddha whose light surpassed that of sun and moon. He taught me how to realize the state of samadhi by thinking exclusively of Amitabha Buddha. By way of illustration, if a man concentrates his mind on someone else, while the latter always forgets him, both may meet and see, but without recognizing each other. However, if both are keen on thinking of each other, their keenness will grow from one incarnation to another until they become inseparable, like a body and its shadow. The Tathagatas in the 10 directions have compassion for all living beings and always think of them like a mother who never ceases thinking of her son. If the son runs away, her thoughts of him will not help. But if he also thinks of her with the same keenness, they will not be separated in spite of the passing of transmigration. If a living being remembers and thinks of the Buddha, he is bound to behold him in his present or future incarnation. He will not be far from the Buddha, and thus without the aid of any other expedient, his mind will be open. He is like a man whose body, perfumed by incense, gives out fragrance. Hence his name, one glorified by Buddha's fragrance and light. From my fundamental cause ground and with all my thoughts concentrated on the Buddha, I achieve the patient endurance of the uncreate. This is why I help all living beings of this world to control their thoughts by repeating the Buddha's name so that they can reach the pure land. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, I hold that nothing can surpass the perfect control of the 6 senses with the continuous pure thoughts in order to realize samadhi. Meditation on the organ of hearing. Thereupon, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva rose from his seat, prostrated himself with his head at the feet of the Buddha, and declared, I still remember that long before numbers of eons, countless as the sand grains in the Ganges, a Buddha called Avalokiteshvara appeared in the world. When I was with him, I developed the Bodhi mind, and for my entry into samadhi, I was instructed by him to practice meditation by means of the organs of hearing. At first, by directing the organ of hearing into the stream of meditation, this organ was detached from its object, and by wiping out the concept of both sound and stream entry, both disturbance and stillness became clearly non-existent. Thus, advancing step by step, both hearing and its object ceased completely, but I did not stop where they ended. When the awareness of the state and the state itself were realized as non-existent, both subject and object merged into the void, the awareness of which became all-embracing. With further elimination of the void and its object, both creation and annihilation vanished, giving way to the state of nirvana, which then manifested. Suddenly, I leaped over both the mundane and supramundane, thereby realizing an all-embracing brightness pervading the 10 directions, and acquired 2 unsurpassed merits. The first was in accord with the fundamental, profound, enlightened mind of all the Buddhas high up in the 10 directions, and possessed the same merciful power as the Tathagata. The second was in sympathy with the all living beings in the 6 realms of existence, here below in the 10 directions, and shared with them their same plea of compassion. Word-honored one, as I followed and made offering to the Tathagata Avalokiteshvara, he taught me to use my illusory hearing and sublimate it to realize the diamond Vajra Samadhi, which gave me the same power of mercy of all Buddhas and enabled me to transform myself into 32 forms for the purpose of visiting all countries in samsara to convert and liberate living beings. Word-honored one, if there are bodhisattvas who practice samadhi to attain the transcendental mean, when there is a chance for them to realize absolute wisdom, I will appear as Buddha to teach them the dharma to liberate them. If there are solitary students seeking only self-enlightenment who practice the stillness of nirvana, when there is a chance for them to realize it, I will appear as a teacher of self-enlightenment to teach them the dharma to liberate them. If there are students of the 4 noble truths who, after realizing the unreality of suffering and its accumulation, tread the path leading to the extinction of passions, where there is a chance for them to achieve this, I will appear as a hearer Sravaka to teach them the dharma to liberate them. If there are living beings who realize the harmfulness of desire in the mind and abstain from all worldly cravings to achieve purity of body, I will appear as Brahma to teach them the dharma to liberate them. If there are living beings who desire to be lords of devas to rule over the realms of gods, I will appear as Sakra to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to roam freely in the 10 directions, I will appear as Ishvara Deva to teach them the dharma to that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to fly freely in empty space, I will appear as Maheshwara to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to be lords of ghosts and spirits to protect their countries, I will appear as a great warriors to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to rule over the world to protect all its inhabitants, I will appear as a Deva king of the 4 quarters to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to be reborn in the palace of devas to command ghosts and spirits, I will appear as a son of the Deva king of the 4 quarters to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to be kings of the human beings, I will appear as the king to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to be heads of clans to enjoy the respects of their clansmen, I will appear as respectable elder Grahpati to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who enjoy discussing well-known sayings and practice pure living, I will appear as a respectable scholar to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to govern cities and towns, I will appear as a magistrate to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who delight in practicing mysticism for self-awareness, I will appear as a Brahmin to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goal. If there are men who are keen on study and learning and leave home to practice the rules of morality and discipline, I will appear as a bhikshu to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are women who are eager to study and learn and leave home to observe the precepts, I will appear as a bhikshuni to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are men who observe the 5 precepts, I will appear as a upasaka to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are women who observe the 5 precepts, I will appear as a upasika to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are women who are keen to fulfill their home duties, thereby setting a good example to other families and the whole country, I will appear as a queen, a princess, or a noble lady to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are young men who are chaste, I will appear as a celibate youth to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are young women who are keen to avoid carnality in order to preserve their virginity, I will appear as a maiden to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are gods who wish to be free from bondage in their realms, I will appear as a deva to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are dragons, nagas who wish to be free from bondage in their realms, I will appear as a naga to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are yakshas who wish to be free from bondage in their realms, I will appear as a yaksha to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are gandharvas who wish to be free from the bondage in their realms, I will appear as a gandharva to teach them dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are asuras who wish to be freed from bondage in their realms, I will appear as an asura to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are garudas who wish to be freed from bondage in their realms, I will appear as a garuda to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are kinnaras who wish to be freed from bondages in their realms, I will appear as a kinnara to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are Maharoragas who wish to be freed from the bondage in their realms, I will appear as Maharaga to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are living beings who wish to be reborn as human beings, I will appear in human form to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. If there are non-human beings with or without forms, and either thoughtful or thoughtfulness, who wish to be free from bondage in their realms, I will appear as one of them to teach them the dharma so that they reach their goals. These are my 32 transformation bodies in response to the needs of all countries in samsara, achieved by means of the uncreated sovereignty power of samadhi realized in my practice of sublimating the faculty of hearing. World Honored One, I also use this uncreated sovereign power of diamond samadhi derived from sublimating hearing to share with all living beings in the 6 realms in the 10 directions the same plea for compassion and to bestow upon them 14 kinds of fearlessness which emanate from my body and mind. Since I myself not meditate on sound but on the meditator, I cause all sufferings beings to look into the sound of their voices in order to obtain liberation. By returning discriminative intellect to its absolute source, I cause them to avoid being burned when they find themselves in a great fire. By returning hearing to its source, I cause them to avoid drowning when they are adrift on the sea. By stopping wrong thinking, thereby cleansing their mind, by cleansing their minds of harmfulness, I lead them to safety when they wander in the realms of evil ghosts. By sublimating their wrong hearing to restore its absolute condition, thereby purifying all 6 organs, perfecting their functions, I cause them, when in danger, to be immune from sharp weapons, which become blunt and useless like water that cannot be cut and their light that cannot be blown away because their underlying nature does not change. By perfecting the sublimation of their hearing, its bright light pervades the whole dharma realm to destroy the darkness of ignorance, thereby dazzling evil beings such as Yaksha, Raksha, Kumbhana, Pikshasa, Putana, who cannot see them when meeting them. When hearing is reversed so that sound vanishes completely, all illusory objects of sense disappear so that practitioners are freed from their fetters which can no longer restrain them. The elimination of sound to perfect hearing results in universal completion so that they can pass through regions infested with robbers and bandits who cannot plunder them. The sublimation of hearing disengages them from the objects of sense and makes them immune from attractive forms, thereby enabling lustful beings to get rid of desires and cravings. The sublimation sound eliminates all sense data and results in the perfect mingling of each organ with its objects and the total eradication of subject and object, thereby enabling all vindictive beings to bury anger and hate. After the elimination of sense data and the return to the bright reality, both inner body and mind and outer phenomena becomes crystal clear and free from all hindrances, so that dull and ignorant unbelievers, Ichantika, can get rid of the darkness of ignorance. When their bodies are in harmony with the nature of hearing, they can, from their immutable state of enlightenment, Bodhimandala, re-enter the world to liberate others, without harming the worldly, and go anywhere making offerings to Buddhas, countless as dust, serving every Tathagata in the capacity of a son of the king of the law, and having the power to give male hires with blessed virtues and wisdom to childless people who want boys. The perfecting of the 6 organs unifies their divided functions so that they become all-embracing, thus revealing the great mirror wisdom and immaterial Tathagata womb, compatible with all Dharma doors taught by Buddhas, as uncountable as dust. They can bestow upright, blessed, gracious, and respect-inspiring girls on childless parents who want daughters. In this great Chilokosum, which contains 100 lakhs of suns and moons, there are now bodhisattvas, countless as sand grains in 62 Ganga rivers. They practice the dharma to set up a good example to all living beings by befriending, teaching, and converting them. In their wisdom, their expedient methods differ, because I used one penetrating organ which led to my realization through the faculty of hearing. My body and mind embrace the whole karma realm, in which I teach all living beings to concentrate their minds on calling my name. The merits that follow are the same as those derived from calling on the names of all these bodhisattvas. World-honored one, my single name does not differ from those uncountable ones because of my practice and training which led to my true enlightenment. These are the 14 fearless powers which I bestow upon beings. World-honored one, because of my perfect understanding which led to my attainment of the supreme path, I acquired 4 inconceivable absolute virtues. 1. When I first realized the hearing mind, which was most profound, the essence of mind, which is the Tathagata store, disengaged itself from hearing and could no longer be divided by seeing, hearing, feeling, and knowing, and so became one pure and clean, all-pervading, precious Bodhi. This is why I take on different wonderful forms and master countless number of esoteric mantras. I can appear with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, up to 108, 1,000, 10,000, and 84,000 sovereign chakra faces with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 24, and up to 108, 1,000, 10,000, and 84,000 arms making various gestures, mudras, and with 2, 3, 4, 9, up to 108, 1,000, 10,000, and 84,000 clean and pure precious eyes, either merciful or wrathful, in a state either of still imperturbability, jnana samadhi, or of absolute wisdom, prajna, to save and protect living beings so that they can enjoy great freedom. 2. Because of my meditation by means of the organ of hearing, which resulted in my disengagement from the 6 sense data like a sound going through a wall without hindrances, I can, with each appearance and with the aid of each mantra, bestow fearfulness upon suffering beings in countries as countless as dust in the 10 directions, in which I am regarded as the giver of doubtlessness. 3. Because of the perfection which I won the sublimation, the appropriate organ living beings in countries which I visit lay down their desires and attachments and offer their bodies and treasures to implore my compassion. 4. As I have realized the Buddha mind and attained ultimate reality, I can make offerings to the Tathagatas in 10 directions and satisfy living beings in 6 worlds who seek virtuous wives, good sons, samadhi, long life, and even pari-nirvana. As the Buddha now asks about the best means of perfection, my method, which consists in regulating the organ of hearing so as to quiet the mind for its entry into the stream of meditation leading to the state of samadhi and attainment of enlightenment, is the best. World-honored one, that Buddha raised my excellent method of perfection and gave me, in the presence of the assembly, the name of Avalokiteshvara. Because of my all-embracing absolute function of hearing, my name is known everywhere. Thereupon, the Buddha, from his lion seat, sent out from the 5 members of his body rays of light, which reached and shone on the heads of Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas, countless as dust in the 10 directions. In return, countless Tathagatas sent back rays of light, which shone on the heads of the Buddha, great bodhisattvas and arahats in the assembly, causing the grooves and streams to intone the dharma and uncountable rays of light to interlace in precious nets, a spectacle never seen before. As a result, all the bodhisattvas and arahats in the assembly realized the diamond samadhi. At the same time, showers of green, yellow, red, and white lotus blossom turned the whole space into 7-colored expanse and caused mountains, rivers, and the great earth to disappear, and all countless other realms to merge into one universe filled with songs and recitations. Thereupon, the Tathagata said to Manjusri, son of the Dharma King, these 25 bodhisattvas and arahats who no longer need to study and learn have related the expedient methods used by them at the start of their practice for their realization of Bodhi. In reality, each of these methods does not differ from and is neither superior nor inferior to the others. Tell me which one of them is suitable to Ananda so that he can awaken to it, and which one is easy to achieve for the benefit of living beings who, after my nirvana, wish to practice with the bodhisattva vehicle in their search for supreme Bodhi.